You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, U.S. Marshals apprehend a Grove, Oklahoma woman considered as a most wanted suspect.
We've got the snow coming down on this Thursday morning. We're not only going to take a look at your current road conditions, but also all your closings at KOAMnewsnow.com. We'll have that and more from the Skywatch Weather Center.
Also, a victim of the tornado that hit a candle factory in Mayfield, Kentucky, is released from the hospital after 2 weeks. Just in time to celebrate a special day. All that and more coming up.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. Nearly 6 years after a Miami, Oklahoma man stabbed an elderly man and doused him with bleach, he learns his sentence. A judge sentenced Brian Waterman to 36 years in prison for attempted murder and aggravated kidnapping. In 2016, Waterman broke into a Baxter Springs, Kansas home, repeatedly stabbed the resident, 78-year-old Bob Hopkins, and then poured bleach on him. Hopkins survived the attack. Jurors convicted Waterman this past November. U.S. Marshals captured a Grove, Oklahoma woman who was considered a most wanted suspect. Authorities yesterday morning arrested Heather Griffith near Grove. Griffith was wanted for violating her probation after pleading guilty to stabbing a woman at a hotel in Grove in November. Congressional redistricting, voting rights, abortion, and a whole lot of money will dominate the attention of Missouri lawmakers of the next 4.5 months. As of noon today, the annual session of the 101st Missouri General Assembly is in session. The session will be marked by time pressures and some really interesting political dynamics. Kermit Miller has more.
Lawmakers this year are under the gun to approve a supplemental budget that funds immediate education needs and Medicaid expansion, and to draw up new congressional districts in time for candidate filing.
The committee's been working for a long time on it. We're going to move as quickly as we can.
Last year, the majority Republicans could have approved any map they liked. But this year, Governor Mike Parson appointed 2 GOP members to administrative posts. Another House Republican passed away unexpectedly in October. And just today, 2 more resigned to take jobs in the private sector.
What an honor to serve in this building. That sometimes you got to know when to fold them, right?
And that leaves House Republicans 1 vote shy of their 2/3 supermajority. That's important because in order to get congressional redistricting on the books now and not delayed until the end of August after the primary elections, the majority will need to adopt an emergency clause. That requires a 2/3 majority, which gives the badly outnumbered House Democrats some leverage.
So we're going to be putting together a whole lot of asks as the time comes where they're going to need our votes for that emergency clause.
Republicans will want to tighten the rules for voting and initiative petitions, and some will push for a Texas-style abortion law. Parson also wants more money for state workers with a higher minimum wage for people at the bottom and a 5.5% cost of living adjustment for everyone.
The state government is having a hard time keeping employees, especially in pivotal roles. So we need to be responsive to that, and I think we will be.
A quick correction, I misspoke. The session actually started yesterday at noon, not today, obviously. Well, the session will end this year on the 13th of May. A quick school closing to add. Golden City, Missouri School District classes are canceled there today. We'll have a complete list of closings coming up with Michael and your weather. The Alliance of Southwest Missouri is connecting area nonprofits with the tools and people they need to serve the community. They've created a Facebook page called Community Resources for Nonprofit Professionals. It's a forum for nonprofits to view job listings, classes, funding opportunities, and more.
A lot of those times are case managers, social workers, school counselors. So we're thinking, okay, well, this is a very niche group of people that we tend to work with. So, and a lot of that messaging comes through our Facebook, our Instagram, and the rest of our social media accounts. So that's why we thought if we have a Facebook group for it, they can communicate between themselves.
You can find a link to the resource page in this story on our website. That's at KOAMnewsnow.com. Freeman Health System, like companies across the nation, is looking to fill several positions. The company hosted an open house and hiring fair at Pitt State's Bicknell Family Center for the Arts. Officials say they're looking to fill full and part-time positions. both clinical and non-clinical. However, in the time we were there, very few job candidates showed up to the event. Freeman Health employees we spoke to would not comment on the lack of attendance at the fair, but the hospital system is far from the only company looking for employees right now. Analysts say a nationwide labor shortage is driven in part by early retirement. A record 4.5 million people left their jobs in November. That's according to the Bureau for Labor Statistics. Well, this Kentucky toddler, there she is, has caught the attention of someone at Windsor Castle after dressing up like the Queen. Aw, 2-year-old Jalen Sutherland wore this outfit as her Halloween costume. That's my kind of girl. Her family's corgis completed the look since Queen Elizabeth II loves those dogs. Jalen's mother, Caitlin, sent a photo of her daughter to Windsor Castle and got a response. Nice. Lady in Waiting Mary Morrison writes that the outfit was splendid and says the Queen was pleased with the photo.
That's so cool she got a response.
The only thing better would be if her coat dress was pink.
For those of you, I'm not saying who may be new to the show, but for those of you who may not be familiar, Tanya has a great affinity for the royal family, and she absolutely knows just about every fact about them. She has a wealth of knowledge. And just for you to read that story, I could almost see you almost envious.
A little bit.
When you found out she got a letter back from Windsor Castle.
It's kind of giving me ideas for Halloween next year.
You beat me to the punch. I'm like, I think I know what you're probably going to dress up as next year, just so you can see if you get a letter back.
Yeah, I'd be like the tallest Queen Elizabeth ever, though.
All right, Tanya, let's jump into travel conditions and closures. Kind of took the camera, faced it off to the north right there, just because it gives you an idea of the snow blowing in there from the north. We'll rotate it here as we go throughout the show and talk about what we've got as far as 7th and Range Line. It's partially covered right now, not too bad. Let's talk about some school closures, however, because on the Skywatch Storm Tracker, we haven't seen inordinate amounts of snow, but we are seeing it pile up now down in the eastern portion of southwest Missouri below I-44 and now beginning to revamp out in the western part of southeast Kansas, an indicator that we've got several more hours before this is all said and done. As far as what we're looking at with our school closures, Golden City, Miller, and then Trinity Lutheran in Freistatt. And so that is also, because of the amount of area that these cover, if you were to take about Lamar and Bebop down into Golden City right there, and then take a little bit down to the southeast into Miller, that's where those schools are located. Of course, Freistatt then down to the south right there. But remember, when we do get into inclement weather season, it's a great chance to go to KOAMnewsnow.com. At the very top, you'll see a tab for closings. And so the fact that we're at 3, that is not too bad. Let's talk travel conditions, because this is rapidly changing. Here we go from the Missouri Department of Transportation. And I'll do the color codes here because the biggest development is here along 44. At one point in time, we were considering this partially covered. Well, that's now changed. We're going completely covered. And this is really running from the state line all the way to Springfield. So please know that if you got to be on 44, number one, you're going to need to get out early. Number two, plan on taking it very, very slow. And then if you're traversing up to the north, 2 things to point out. While 49 in between Carthage and Nevada is partially covered, then when you get closer to Nevada, that's where we had that storm report of 1 inch, and that was at 6 a.m. So it's piled up since then. We've got fully covered I-49 and also look at 54. And so that 54 coverage area is going to run all the way to Fort Scott as well. Very cold. We're talking about temperatures right now that are down into the 20s, if not the teens. There we go. Look at that. Tanya, it got so cold. You know what the computer said? Michael, it's too cold. I don't want to do this right now. Look, we've got 16 degrees at 7th and Range Line, and we're going to ride the teens all day long. Remember, multiple layers, not only for yourself, but especially the kiddos, if they need to be outside for any extended periods of time.
Too cold. Up next, the Omicron surge continues to take its toll on school reopenings and hospitals as the United States hits another massive number of new cases. And later, we'll meet a police officer who'll show us some ways to help prevent catalytic converter theft. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14.
Good luck trying to find a farmer.
The additional federally run locations will open in 6 states: Maine, Maryland, Nevada, Delaware, Texas, and Washington. Cases of the Omicron variant are spiking, increasing demand for tests. Wednesday, the White House reported thousands of free tests provided daily in mobile federal testing sites in New York and New Jersey. They say they're also working on distributing free at-home COVID tests. Last month, President Biden announced 500 million of those will go out. And Tuesday, his administration shared the government is working on a system to distribute the test, including a website. They say Americans will start receiving the test in the coming weeks. Sundance Film Festival canceled in-person events on Wednesday, citing concerns about the high transmissibility of the Omicron variant. The events were scheduled as a hybrid of both virtual and in-person screening events in Utah later this month. And now organizers have moved the entire event online. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the Omicron variant now accounts for 95% of new U.S. COVID cases. The Delta variant makes up nearly all the rest. CDC Vaccine Advisory Committee voted Wednesday to recommend expanding Pfizer boosters for ages 12 to 17. At least 5 months after the primary vaccination series. CDC says vaccinations among 12 to 17-year-olds have slowed recently. On Monday, the FDA expanded the emergency use authorization for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine boosters to children ages 12 to 15. More school closures and hospitals are reaching critical mass as the coronavirus's Omicron variant continues to sweep the nation. U.S. reported nearly 900,000 new cases yesterday alone. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. CBS News' Laura Podesta reports from Washington, D.C. with that and the bit of good news about the booster shots the CDC delivered yesterday.
It's official. Children ages 12 to 15 are now eligible for a Pfizer booster after the decision was approved by the FDA and yesterday by the CDC. That means roughly 5 million kids can be further protected as parents grapple with the anxiety of sending their children to school during a record-breaking surge.
It makes me a little nervous. Honestly, if I had the choice to keep her home, I would.
An increasing number of schools nationwide are making the decision to keep children at home. In Chicago, school leaders of the nation's third largest district canceled classes for a second day. They failed to reach an agreement with the teachers union, which voted Tuesday in favor of remote learning. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot expressed her frustration.
The safest place for kids to be in the pandemic is in person in our schools. That has not changed.
Here in Washington, D.C., where the infection rate is among the highest in the nation, students and staff return to the classroom today, as long as they can bring proof of a negative COVID test. But finding a COVID test has been difficult for some, like Kayla Putman in Virginia.
I've been out here for about 2 hours.
And in California, where cases shot up more than 500% over the last 2 weeks, criticism is being directed at Governor Gavin Newsom for failing to deliver on a promise to provide rapid at-home tests to students and staff statewide. Laura Podesta, CBS News.
The Grammys, which were supposed to be live at the Staples Center in Los Angeles January 31st, are among the latest major events to be postponed. The Golden Globes and Sundance Film Festival have announced they will be going virtual this year. Mexico's Grand Warlock presented his predictions for 2022. Antonio Vasquez, known as Mexico's Brujo Mayor, or Grand Warlock, said the pandemic will continue and blame people who have not been vaccinated in the U.S. Of course, blame the U.S. He's from Mexico. Also said that Mexico's President Obrador would face health problems. I don't wish this on him, but he may develop a slightly serious illness, he said. The world would continue to face climate change and rising sea levels, according to Vasquez, who blamed governments, particularly in the U.S., for their lack of action. Wow. It's like us blaming Canada for everything. Donald Trump will not return as president of the United States.
It's not an election year.
And that's according to Vasquez, adding that he expects a Democratic victory led by U.S. President Joe Biden in the 2022 United States House of Representative elections. Grand Warlock was speaking at a news conference, because that's what they do, in Mexico City, at the end of which his followers performed purification rituals on attendees.
Okay, it's all the United States' fault. And also, too, I will say that he garners a little attention there at a press conference. That seemed like a pretty good turnout.
Yeah.
I think you and I could hold a joint press conference and probably announce something huge. We wouldn't get that kind of turnout.
Just to let you know that it's like serious business. They do rituals at the end of it, so.
I ain't touching that, man.
And We blame everything on the U.S.
I did notice that.
That was
Yeah,
funny.
I did notice that. Okay, let's go to a live look over 7th and Rangeline here because we're going to focus on travel conditions right now. 16 degrees, the snow's not going anywhere as it continues to come down, especially along the eastern edge of southwest Missouri, south of I-44 beginning to pile up. Even as we work out to the central and western portions, we've got a little bit more coming in out of central Kansas. So we've got a couple more hours before this is all said and done. Latest reports coming out around 6 o'clock, an inch of accumulation. That was both in Barton and in Vernon County. But also want to point out, that was from 6 o'clock. We've got a while before the snow even stops. And a mess as they work out to the east. Remember, this is actually going to stretch from Washington State, kind of make a bow through us, and then head up all the way toward Maine. Specifically, the travel conditions are now covering portions of I-44. You go from the Oklahoma state line up through Joplin and run that all the way to Springfield. The Missouri Department of Transportation indicating that as fully covered. Work up to the north from Lamar up to Nevada, I-49 fully covered. And then Highway 54, Fort Scott, Nevada, all the way east through Eldo. That is also fully covered. Bebop down into southeast Kansas. We've got 2 reports, one of those being Highway 69 in between Columbus and Pittsburgh that's covered. The other one, 166, coming out of Baxter and headed towards Chautauqua. So far, the Oklahoma Department of Transportation not indicating any travel concerns in the Sooner State. Winter weather advisory for the eastern edge of southwest Missouri runs all the way until noon. And please note, with our temperatures, slow down on the evening commute as well. Anticipate the slick spots will still remain, even though our road crews are doing a marvelous job. And make sure you have multiple layers as we'll dip into overnight lows into the teens. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. A Kentucky man celebrates his recovery after nearly dying when a tornado hit a candle factory in Mayfield, Kentucky. Part of that devastating fatal tornado outbreak that hit 8 states in the middle of December. As Brooke Buckner shows us, this man's going back home after more than 2 weeks spent recovering in a hospital.
Thank you all very much.
A big day for Jim Douglas, surrounded by family and Mercy Health Lord's hospital staff.
I was here for Christmas and New Year's,
For the health and safety of our patients and visitors,
they made it as best as they could here, but I'm getting out.
Douglas is on the road to recovery after tornado debris nearly crushed him during his shift at the Mayfield Candle Factory.
The wall had collapsed on the right side of my head, and then the debris just, it was like twisting around me. And there was nothing I could do to try to keep my limbs in or anything. It just happened so fast.
He says he leaned on his faith to get him out of the rubble.
I prayed for God to get me out, and then after I was there for a couple hours, I prayed for him just to take me home because I couldn't take the pain anymore. But he chose to answer the first prayer, and he got me out of there. I lost some friends that they're not even, they're no longer with us. So it's a blessing to be alive.
The hospital staff says he made a lot of progress during his stay, thanks to his positive attitude.
I can move forward now and get as far as I can in life. I've been given a second chance, and a lot of people haven't.
And he's getting out just in time for his birthday.
I didn't miss everything.
He says there's a lot to look forward to.
Being with my 2 sons, that's 2 of them, and then my dog Clyde. I miss my dog, and I know he misses me. I still have a home to go to. My home wasn't destroyed, so I'm blessed.
Now he's relearning basic tasks to get back to where he left off.
Showering, cooking, just all the normal things. Shave, brush my teeth, but it's a long road. I got a long way to go.
But he plans to get through it with his bright outlook.
Bye.
Douglas has been released from the hospital just in time to celebrate his 58th birthday. He celebrates that on January the 14th. We'll be back with this morning's 4-state hero right after this.
It's time to honor today's 4-state hero, Bob Cantrell, who served in the U.S. Army from 1942 to 1945. A native of Bristow, Oklahoma, Cantrell was stationed in Korea, Vietnam, and in Germany. He earned a Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and several other awards. We thank you, Sergeant First Class Bob Cantrell, today's 4th State Hero. Law enforcement agencies across the United States are warning car owners about a rash of catalytic converter thefts. Catalytic converters are a key component of a car's emission system, reducing the amount of harmful pollution released. Now, thieves often sell the converters for some quick cash on the black market, leaving victims with hefty replacement fees. And that's what's led a police officer from Washington State to come up with a way to help people protect their vehicles. Joe Vigil reports.
In a Facebook post, Jason Hauk says this is all he bought as part of a do-it-yourself catalytic converter cage.
Altogether, I spent a little less than $40.
And with just a little bit of his time, less than an hour, Hauk now has a homemade device on one of the family's cars to keep thieves from cutting it out and swiping it. By the way, that's Police Chief Jason Hauk, who talked to me on Zoom.
I constantly preach to people here in the city to, do certain things, take all the stuff out of their cars, lock their doors, make sure the garage is shut and all that. And I was like, well, how can I help try and protect people from this happening?
Well, Jason Hauk is chief of the Newcastle, Washington Police Department, a suburb of Seattle. He told me he's seen his share of theft reports and knows people are hurting from repair costs, which can be thousands of dollars. Thieves want the expensive metals inside your converter. So to help the people he serves, he did a little research, Google YouTube, and posted his DIY project on the city's Facebook page, starting with that wire cable he bought.
And I got underneath my car and wrapped it around the catalytic converter.
He kept wrapping and wrapping, trying not to hit sensitive parts of the exhaust. It's a self-described mess that the chief tells Facebook followers may make Johnny Tweaker move on.
Think of the Clark Griswold's ball of Christmas lights with all those tangled wires and all that kind of stuff. So even if they are able to still cut it loose, they're going to have a heck of a time pulling it out from the ball of wires down there that's connected to the frame.
Prior to wrapping the wire, Hauk sprayed the converter with bright heat-resistant paint, saying if Johnny Tweaker did somehow get the converter out, a scrapyard may question why his converter was orange and decide not to buy it. The city's top cop helping others and himself from being Johnny Tweaker's next victim.
There you go. Another half hour of news and weather is just ahead. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, we'll take a closer look at new releases coming to theaters and streaming services. And regulations in Europe concerning ink draw the ire of many tattoo artists. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We'll be right back.
And then she said, "You're just a..."
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:32. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Nearly 6 years after a Miami, Oklahoma man stabbed an elderly man and doused him with bleach, he learns his sentence. A judge sentenced Brian Waterman to 36 years in prison for attempted murder and aggravated kidnapping. In 2016, Waterman broke into a Baxter Springs, Kansas home, repeatedly stabbed the resident, 78-year-old Bob Hopkins, and then poured bleach on him. Hopkins survived the attack. Jurors convicted Waterman this past November. U.S. Marshals capture a Grove, Oklahoma woman who was considered a most wanted suspect. Authorities yesterday morning arrested Heather Griffith near Grove. Griffith was wanted for violating her probation after pleading guilty to stabbing a woman at a hotel in Grove in November. Joplin Area Habitat for Humanity held 2 home dedication ceremonies yesterday, and these are the organization's 177th and 178th homes completed in the Joplin area. Yesterday's homes went to the Curl family and the Thurman family.
I would say that he's really excited and happy. We were actually over here a lot during Christmas break, and we played in the yard a lot, and he didn't ever want to leave. So I would think that he's super happy and really excited.
Habitat for Humanity plans to construct 8 to 10 new homes this year. Walmart's playing a role in feeding hungry folks in the Lamar area who might not have money to hit up their stores. The retail giant donates produce to the Good Samaritan Food Pantry in Lamar, Missouri. The produce is available to all Barton County residents.
This program's open to anybody in Barton County. It's not based on income. If somebody finds themselves in a shortage on food or something, anybody from Barton County is welcome to participate in this.
You can find the Good Samaritan Food Pantry at 1301 Perry in Lamar. At 4 years old, one child was stolen from his parents and sold to another family. He never lost his determination to find his way back home. Fox News' Rob Dawson has more on this miraculous family reunion.
According to the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, more than 1 million kids are reported missing every year. This is the remarkable story of one of them.
Hello everyone, I'm looking for my family.
Jing Wei was only 4 years old when he was abducted from his home in southwestern China and sold to a new family in a different province. Being so young, Jing Wei says he couldn't remember his birth name, the name of his parents, or where he came from. Determined to find his way back home, Jing Wei painstakingly drew a map of the few buildings, paths, and hills he could remember from his town. He did this every day from the age of 4 till he was 13, so he wouldn't forget.
It is the only clue that I had to find my home in the future.
Now, more than 30 years after his abduction, Jing Wei posted his map to a Chinese social media site last month, along with a plea to the internet to help him find his family. And what can only be described as a miracle, police got a hold of the map and were able to identify the exact village he came from and used DNA samples to track down his family. Emotions running high on New Year's Day as Jing Wei was finally reunited with his mother and 2 siblings after decades apart. His father had unfortunately passed away, but Jing Wei had this to say to him.
I will take good care of my mom.
Jing Wei is now a father himself and plans to visit his dad's grave with his family during Chinese Lunar New Year so they can all be together. Rob Dawson, Fox News.
Wow, we probably couldn't go a day without it, but today you have permission to thank your tech because it's National Technology Day. So whether you can't be without your smartphone, your home wouldn't be a home without your virtual assistant, or you are eyeing the future of autonomous cars, technology is all around us and ever changing. As 22 begins and we look towards new inventions and advancements, remember how all those everyday items that make life easier and more connected. Try to imagine what we wouldn't be able to live without in the next decade.
Fortunate enough to have a great deal of technology from the Skywatch Weather Center, and we need it. On days like today, it's not only snow-covered roads, but also, too, you'll notice a decrease in visibility as we move through our morning. That's a live look outside of Television City. This is from the Missouri Department of Transportation. Really want to point out the fact that from the state line, Oklahoma-Missouri state line, all the way to Springfield, we've got covered I-44. As a matter of fact, we're beginning to pick up accident reports in Springfield. So far for Joplin and the surrounding areas, haven't really had a whole lot of reports. We've got minor reports of slide-offs and everything, but nothing like what they're experiencing in Springfield. So thank all of you for keeping that in the back of your head when you head out the door, and make sure you take it slow. Oh, thank you for the instant refresh. And then up on I-49, up to Nevada, and then all of Highway 54 covered as well. As far as what we're looking at snow-wise, still dominating most of southwest Missouri and down now in northeast Oklahoma. Portions of a break in southeast Kansas. But now we're going to re-roll through Crawford County coming out of Labette, and then we've got another one right here in Wichita that's going to make its way through, an indicator that we really won't be done until probably about the noon hour. Temperatures frigid today, not going anywhere. Snow is going to stay on the ground, overnight low down to 14. Friday afternoon, we get a little bit of a rebound, but the melt does not begin in earnest until Saturday. Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Do you play at casinos?
On the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our morning Insta poll, Tanya just telling us it's National Tech Day and asking what's your favorite type of technology. Right now, 66% of you say, yeah, it's got to be the phone. Got to have that with you. And a distant 8% are tied with video games and smart TVs. From action on the big screen to streaming series at home, we got a look at this week's new releases. Here's one of our favorites, Ashley Dvorkin.
Top agents from around the world.
Bringing the action to theaters nationwide this week is The 355. The spy flick takes audiences on a globe-trotting adventure with international agents teaming up to stop a high-tech threat. This star-packed cast includes Jessica Chastain, Diane Kruger, Lupita Nyong'o, Penelope Cruz, Fawn Bingbing, Edgar Ramirez, and Sebastian Stan.
I heard you were getting out today.
In limited release as well as on digital and on demand is The Commando with Michael Jai White and Mickey Rourke. The crime thriller is about an elite DEA agent who discovers a stash of money in his house, putting his family in the sights of a newly released criminal.
What does it want with my son?
For a horror movie, The Legend of La Llorona is also in theaters before hitting on demand and digital January 11th. The scares begin when an evil spirit stalks a family on vacation in Mexico.
Today, my nephew is officially a man.
From theaters to streaming, the George Clooney-directed drama The Tender Bar is now on Amazon Prime Video. Starring Ben Affleck, the story is based on J.R. Moringer's memoir about his childhood, the father figure he had in his uncle, and his path becoming a writer.
I don't even know how this is my life.
Netflix adds the series Hype House following the lives of the social media creators all living there.
You gotta take things to the next level.
And fans are still revisiting the Cobra Kai dojo.
First, you gotta learn how to fly.
Season 4 reached #1 on the streamer's most watched TV list. In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
Be right back with Consumer Watch right after this.
How would you?
It's estimated around a third of Americans have tattoos, and the inks used to make them are mostly unregulated here in the U.S. But in Europe, officials want to blot out what they call dangerous chemicals. CBS's Ian Lee reports.
French tattoo artist Tintin uses a rainbow of colors to make his mark. But a new European Union law aims to cap his creativity by restricting what he can use.
If we don't have any colors or any ink to work with, what are we going to work with?
Starting this week, EU regulators are banning 4,000 chemicals commonly used in colorful tattoo inks and permanent makeup.
The protection of the public health of the European citizens is our primary concern.
Officials say many of the inks can cause health issues ranging from skin irritation to reproductive problems and even cancer, and argue the tattoo industry had time to prepare.
For many of the chemicals which have been banned, there are actually substitutes.
But alternatives for some of the most popular inks are in short supply. Tattoo artists worry this could deal another blow to parlors already struggling from the pandemic.
Our position about this stupid law is like to fight against it.
Tintin believes the tough new rules will force folks to go to the black market to get the colors they want. Ian Lee, CBS News.
The tattoo industry argues there is no hard evidence directly linking tattoos with cancer. Some financial experts say this is the year to ask for a raise. Workers may be coming in to more money this year. This according to recent reports claiming companies are setting aside nearly 4% of payroll for wage increases. One personal finance expert from Credible.com says employees have the upper hand, encouraging people to reevaluate what the market value of their job is and bring a number to the table, but recommends leaving the skyrocketing inflation argument out of it and be prepared with another job offer lined up to help your case. Well, after nearly a century at the top, General Motors is no longer the leader in U.S. auto sales. Toyota has taken the top spot for the first time. The Japanese automaker yesterday reported U.S. sales 5% higher than GM. GM partly blamed manufacturing supply shortages for its decline, but Toyota also builds most of the vehicles it sells in the U.S. and America. Toyota says 70% of its vehicles sold in the country are built at 5 U.S. plants. Employers did ramp up hiring in December at the fastest pace in months. According to payroll processor ADP, private companies added 807,000 positions last month, more than doubling expectations. New jobs were added across the board, but leisure and hospitality positions led the way. We'll be right back with more after this, but first, let's take a look at the market prices before the opening bell.
Welcome to Sonic. May I take your...
If you or maybe somebody you know is still awaiting a holiday package, well, listen up. Authorities are investigating a massive theft ring after almost 600 Amazon packages were found dumped around Oklahoma County. One home stuffed with discarded boxes, undelivered packages, and now the sheriff's department said someone removed the items they wanted and stashed the packages. 3 suspects now face felony charges. Shelby Montgomery has the story on how cops busted up this ring.
It's the Grinch who stole Christmas. This green man is standing on the front lawn of the house that was filled with Amazon packages.
Everywhere we looked, there were packages. Anywhere you could stick something, we found packages.
That includes closets, the attic, crawl spaces, the detached garage, and the storm shelter.
Literally, there's thousands of packages.
Those packages filling this 26-foot box truck.
Top to bottom, front to back with stuff.
But how'd they do it? Officials say the suspects were contracted drivers through Amazon. They would pick up the packages from the distribution center and they should have delivered them to the post office, but they never made it there.
When they would go to Amazon distribution center to pick up their pallets, they would possibly grab an extra pallet or two and then take them to the residence in Luther and unload them.
Investigators say this was going on for several months.
There were several thousand packages there. That's something you're not going to do overnight or even in a month or two.
Investigators say receipts found at that dumping site led them here to this house. Investigators also found another illegal dumping site here in Luther, and they do believe it could be related.
Now, how did it all go down? That's the big question. We'll get this. Sheriff's Department says 2 of the suspects worked for contractors and were employed by Amazon. The third, charged with meth possession, and officials are asking customers like you and I who may have lost packages, don't call the Sheriff's Department. Please, they're busy as it is. We all need to contact Amazon. And if you're awaiting one and you think you may be a part of it, don't hesitate to contact us. We'd love to follow up on that. Live look outside of Television City where we see the snow-covered road right there, but also visibility also becoming a little bit of a factor. The later morning snow is now dominating the central portion of the 4 states, right along all state lines and then up through southwest Missouri. It's going to be pretty constant here for the next 2 hours or so. And then even though we're seeing breaks throughout southeast Kansas, remember, that one right there in Wichita, it's going to head our way as well. So we've got storm reports that have come in. And I want to point out the time frame on this. This goes back to 6:30 where we had an inch of snow in Barton and Vernon County. This one actually goes back to 5:30 right there in Pittsburgh where it was half an inch. So let's go ahead and tack on about an inch to everything that we've already received so far. And not a whole lot behind this. This will dive down a little bit and kind of die out. So really about the noon hour we should be done. And then this is just going to be an absolute mess down here. This rain and this freezing rain actually not associated with our system. That's Gulf moisture that's moved up and it's going to combo with our storm system that came off the Pacific Northwest. Let's talk about some treacherous travel conditions, specifically I-44 from Joplin all the way to Springfield. We've got completely covered roads. Watch out, they've got snow plows out there, so make sure you give them plenty of room as well. And then as we go from Lamar up to Nevada on I-49, it is covered, as is all of US 54, ranging from Fort Scott through Nevada up to Eldo. In southeast Kansas, we've got a covered Highway 69, and we also have a covered 166 from Baxter Springs out to Chetopa. Do want to point out a little positive note. Winter weather advisories. They have been canceled for the north. They have been canceled for the majority of southeast Kansas. We're progressing in the right direction. We are going to hold on to these till about 10 o'clock here, and then let's go noon on the eastern edge of southwest Missouri. This snow is going to stick around. Not going to have a chance to go anywhere because it is frigid today. Need multi-layers, and also too, overnight, we'll have single-digit wind chills. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
When a person is in...
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Here's what's happening today. Today marks the 1-year anniversary of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Supporters of former President Trump breached the Capitol after his speech challenging the 2020 election results. President Biden is scheduled to address the nation while former President Trump canceled plans for a news conference from his Florida estate. CDC expands eligibility for Pfizer's COVID-19 booster shots to include all Americans 12 years and older. at least 5 months after they've been fully vaccinated. According to the CDC, the 7-day average of daily cases nearly doubled from the previous week. North Korea says it has successfully launched a hypersonic missile that can achieve more than 5 times the speed of sound. The launch is part of the Hermit Nation's efforts to modernize its strategic weapons systems. U.S. officials say the move violated multiple UN resolutions and threatened North Korea's neighbors. Let's check in with Mike with a final look at your forecast.
Tanya, snow should be out of here by about, say, 11 o'clock noon, but remember, it is bitterly cold, almost dangerously cold, dropping down to single-digit wind chills overnight.
All right, well, it may be National Technology Day, but it's also got a sweet factor, too. It's National Shortbread Day in honor of the traditional Scottish treat enjoyed across the world. It's typically made with white sugar, butter, and flour, but there's many modern variations, which can include salt, ground rice, corn flour, and frosting. It's called shortbread because of its short or crumbly texture. You can mark the day trying out a new recipe.
Don't.
Just stick to the favorite. Yeah.
Don't try a new recipe, try the old ones. And by the way, you ain't getting my mom's. She won't even give it to her sister.
Ooh, it's time to order Girl Scout shortbread cookies.
Thank you. My mom will smoke those. Thank you so much for letting us put the good in your morning. Back with more news and weather when we see you at noon.
Have a great morning and an even better day.
How would you like to win a dream? Get